Hi everybody, welcome to the continuing series of candidate Q&A. Tonight we are here with Brian Garry. He's a candidate for Cincinnati City Council. And you are with Together We Will, Southwest Ohio. I'm Nicole, welcome again. We are at this moment linking up to other groups who are also hosting this live feed, so I'm going to do a little filler while we wait for everybody to connect. First, I'm going to say, if you would like to ask Brian a question, we welcome that. Please do. All you have to do is click on the link to the feed or the feed itself, and then you'll have an opportunity to comment. Just type your question in the comments, and we have somebody monitoring those, and they will be relayed to me right here on my computer. I will stop what I am doing, and I will ask. So ask away. We really encourage you to do that. I want to welcome Dawn. She is here with the Cincinnati State ASL program, and she is very generously interpreting for us this evening. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Dawn. You're
welcome. And to repeat, I'm Nicole. This is Brian Garry. He's a candidate for Cincinnati City Council, and we are here for live Q&A. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Of course. The pleasure's all mine.
And may I mention that it's a special day for you?
Sure.
Please join me in wishing a very happy birthday to Brian Garry, who could have spent his evening doing literally anything else, but chose to spend it with us.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Chose to spend it with you.
It was very sweet. I'm going to run through some procedures until I just get the thumbs up that everybody's linked in. I want to let you guys know that if you want to follow all of the Cincinnati City Council and mayoral candidates on Twitter in one fell swoop, you can do it by going to the Together We Will Southwest Ohio Twitter account. That is at TWWSWOH. We have a list of all of the candidates. So if you click on lists, you'll see it. You can click subscribe and you'll get everybody, or you can see the individual members and subscribe to each feed if you'd like. So please do so. And once again, if you want to ask a question of Brian Garry, all you have to do is click the link to the feed or the feed itself and comment with your question, and we will stop and ask. How are we doing, guys? Yeah?
We're good.
Good? All right, let's get started. I'm just going to repeat that we are here with Brian Garry, a candidate for Cincinnati City Council. I'm also going to repeat that it is his birthday. So please join me in wishing him a happy birthday. Happy birthday.
And thank you so much. It is indeed my birthday, and I am 52 years old. And so I want everyone to get on your phone or your computer, get on briangarry.com and donate $27 or $52, whatever you want to do, just fine.
Brian, I'm going to give a brief introduction.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your campaign for a little bit, and then we will start with the questions.
Perfect.
Okay. So everybody, please meet Brian. He is a lifelong Cincinnati resident. By the way, if you are looking for his website, he spells Garry with 2 R's. He attended the Cincinnati public school system, Swifton Primary in Bond Hill, yes, yes, and the School for Creative and Performing Arts. He has years of experience as a community advocate and activist, and when I say years, I mean lots and lots of years. His mother, Patricia Garry, who is actually in the audience tonight, thank you for being here and thank you for lending us your apartment, was a legislative aide for Charles Taft, who is the longest serving council member in the history of Cincinnati. And Brian joined her at protests and rallies and doing legislative work in City Hall. So he's been at this quite a while. Brian has degrees from UC, liberal arts degree, yes, and a degree in art theology, music, and philosophy from Northern Kentucky University. During college, he was very active in environmental cleanup. And he also advocated for the reopening of the St. Francis St. Joseph Catholic Worker House in Over the Rhine, and he served as its executive director. After college, he actually taught music in the Cincinnati Public Schools. You were a band director, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, that's punishing.
For like 50 students.
50 students. Oh, my goodness.
Sands.
All at once?
All at once at Sands, yeah.
Very nice. For 33 years, Brian has run an environmentally responsible construction company, which means it uses green and sustainable materials and methods. Yeah. And his company provides jobs and training for urban youth.
Yeah.
And you give a second chance to people who are shut out of other jobs because they've made past mistakes.
That's right.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. He currently lives in Clifton, and he has been an advocate for Clifton Market and the Clifton Community Arts Center. He is a member of the Democratic Party. Yes.
Yeah.
He has served as a precinct executive and a poll worker, and he's worked on several campaigns, and he's always doing get out the vote activities. You've done a few committees too, so the Mayor's Climate Action Team.
Yeah, I wrote part of that plan.
The City of Cincinnati Human Services Advisory Committee. Yeah. And the city's Community Development Advisory Board. Okay. And he's a regular speaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
And organizer. He does lots of rallies for social and economic justice.
Oh, yes.
And he would like you to get involved too. And so would I, so would everybody here. Feel free. And I've seen pictures of you with Bernie Sanders, and I've seen pictures of you getting carried by police out of a protest.
Yes, occasionally.
Occasionally, more than once. Alrighty then.
Yeah.
And if you want to see those pictures, they are on his Twitter account, which is at Brian Garry, with 2 R's again. His Facebook is also Brian Garry. Website, briangarry.com. And can I mention your office phone number?
Sure.
Okay. It's 221-VOTE, which is 221-8683. All right. So do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and your campaign?
Well, I don't know. I think you pretty much said it all. Gosh. Well, I'm Brian Garry, running for Cincinnati City Council, like Nicole said. Basically, I would just be reiterating everything you said, that I've been a social justice activist, economic justice, and environmental justice activist for many, many years. My roots go, I don't know, so far back to with my mother, and as an older teen with Reverend McCracken, who was my mentor, who just had a heart of gold and helped to set me on my life course of social justice. He started the Talbert House, Camp Joy. He was arrested probably over 20 times for various causes. One of the more recent arrests during the Iraq War, he tried to climb over the fence at the White House and to pour fake blood into the fountain, signifying the blood that would be spilled in Iraq for that war. And he was 89 years old at that time when he did that. So that was my mentor and a wonderful, just caring, loving person. And I was fortunate to be at his side for 13 years. So I also run a green construction company, like you talked about, and we install solar panels, and we hire people who other people wouldn't give a chance to. So people leaving prison, people with various problems in their lives, recovering from addiction, and we believe that they need to have a second or a third or a fourth chance, and that's what's going to help change our society, because every year 3,000 people leave Ohio prisons and come to Cincinnati. So over 10 years, that's 30,000 people. So it's a pretty large number of people that we need to help, and so that they have stable lives. Yeah.
Okay. And is this your first time running for council?
So this is my third time running for council. Third time's a charm. I'm in the company with Tyrone Yates, Roxanne Qualls, Wendell Young, lots of people who have run 3 times or more. And but, so I ran in 2003 as a wild radical, you could say. I didn't know anything about the game of politics. I've learned that there is kind of a game, although I don't take it as a game. And then in 2007, I ran as an endorsed Democrat. It was wonderful. And I had, my office was at the Democratic Party office, so they were very, very supportive, and I had the support of every elected official and the Sierra Club. 28 different trade unions supported me. That was a record number, 28 unions, and I won many areas of our city. So I was there was another conservative guy, he was like number 10, and I was number 9 in several of our wards throughout the city, in North Side, and Clifton Heights, Avondale, the West End, different places where I won. So that was exciting. And I outraised every other Democrat non-incumbent. And so that's it.
All right, thank you. Before I launch into questions, I am just going to remind everybody that if you miss any part of this interview, we will post the whole thing online so you can catch up later if you have to duck out or if you come in late. Again, please do ask us questions. In order to do so, all you have to do is click on the link to the feed or the feed itself. You'll have the opportunity to comment. Just put your question in the comments and it will be relayed to me here. Okay, so shall we get started?
I'm ready.
Okay, well, first of all, to anybody just coming in, please join me in wishing Brian a happy birthday.
Thanks again.
I'm not going to let that go. I'm going to just keep repeating that. All right, so our members submitted a lot of questions. The first one is, what are your exact responsibilities to the city and your constituents?
And I wanted to thank the members. Together we will. And thank Nicole and Sean and Martha and Dawn and everyone that's involved with this project. Those questions are amazing questions. They're very detail-oriented. And so very briefly, what any politician does, including Cincinnati City Council people, there's basically 3 areas that they do. They decide how to spend your tax dollars, they make laws, legislation, and they make policies. And that's basically what we do.
All right.
Or what we in the future will be doing.
We actually have questions coming in already, but I'm going to ask one more of ours before I jump to that. How do you plan to address the needs of all your constituents instead of just your party or just contributors or special interests?
Sure. It's an interesting question because if I'm elected, I will be elected as a Democrat. And so I bring my democratic values with me. I do not share all of the values. There's things that parties have in common, but there's many things that we separate on. I mean, right now we're seeing on a federal level, the decimation of the EPA. Immigrants are not, welcomed and being deported, people who are not committing crimes. We differ on those issues, so I'm not going to represent those issues clearly. But the needs, it talked about the needs of people, and the needs of communities are pretty much the same. When you have need, desire is a different thing, but the basic needs, paved roads, garbage collection, I mean, those things, are universal.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And along those lines, you mentioned that there's a division right now politically. Is there anything that you or City Council can do to heal that divide?
So I don't know about healing the divide because, again, I'm a progressive Democrat. I represent a core issues, environmental justice, racial justice, social justice, economic justice. So my perspective about how we're to spend our city budget, that was one of the things that we do, or make laws, it grows from that foundation. So, but mentioning, there are a lot of things that I've found that I've had in common with Republicans or other conservative people. Give you a couple of, for instances, interesting ones. When I ran in 2007, there was on the ballot a issue to build a new mega jail on Spring Grove in Cincinnati. Every other Democrat up and down the ticket, incumbent, non-incumbent, county commissioner, city, everyone was for this jail. I wasn't for it. I couldn't find it in my heart. It's the wrong direction for our society. Locking more and more people up is not the answer to our problem. So I couldn't get behind it. And also, very conservative groups were also against this jail. So together, we put a referendum together. And it went on the ballot. I was the community coordinator on the executive committee for the NAACP. And we put it on the ballot, and we voted it down. But it was in concert with very conservative elements of our community, because they didn't want it for different reasons, obviously, for taxes and spending and all that type of stuff, But a couple more quick things is one was the waste. They had a tax on trash, a trash tax, and red light cameras, and we came together on all of those issues. And we won all of those issues.
Great. Were you for or against these issues?
Oh, I was against building of the jail, against red light cameras, and against the trash tax, which would, in an imbalanced way, affect the poor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch to some of the questions our
Okay,
viewers
sure,
are
sure.
asking. First, we have someone who says, thank you for your experience with rallying.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for thanking me.
And this person is a member of United We Stand Cincinnati.
Okay.
And she would like to know, what can we do to help with the costs of those hoping to have peaceful rallies here in Cincinnati? We have experienced significant costs, often associated with police protection.
Right. Well, a lot of the rallies do not even require police protection. They're small enough that they don't even require it. I think the last one that was on Fountain Square they were double or triple charged for police that didn't need to be there. And so I would certainly advocate from my position on City Council that we reduce these fees, these unnecessary fees. A lot of them are new fees. They haven't always been there. 3CDC is now in control of Fountain Square. They weren't always in control of Fountain Square. And I would reduce the fees. There was a big problem in Northside, actually, over the past summer, and we were able to lobby and rally and get those fees reduced. They were very, exorbitant to where you couldn't even hold the event.
Thank you.
Sure.
Someone asks, your platform expresses strong support for worker-owned enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, cooperatives face challenges unlike those faced by traditional businesses. As a council member, will you support pro-cooperative policies such as hiring staff? And then it says ... see more.
Okay,
So I'm not sure what the see more is. But
I'll mention I strongly have supported Clifton Market, which is a cooperative, and helped them to be established and fundraise and have fundraised them money from local agencies, and will continue to do so. And I would do the same thing for Apple Street Market as an example, and other cooperatives that I've been members of. I think cooperatives are the wave of the future. I think cooperatives create a just society for all of us. They pay a living wage. That is the kind of corporation that we want to support, worker-owned.
And if you would like to ask a question, please do so. Just click on the feed or the video itself and comment with whatever your question is. And do we have a follow-up on the... Okay, the follow-up to that, see more, is... will you support pro-cooperative policies such as hiring staff in City Hall who have experience with the cooperative model and dedicating a portion of business incubation funds to worker-owned cooperatives?
Absolutely. I think that's a tremendous question and a tremendous direction for us to go in. When I was director, or whatever word, for the Anti-Displacement Project, the Alliance for a Fair and Just Community, that was the direction that we cared about for housing, cooperative housing. So a lot of housing in New York is cooperative housing, so where groups own the housing together. And of course that model for housing can extend to businesses. There are many worker-owned businesses, and one is the Community Blend in Evanston, which is a coffee house, And of course, there's Synergy and the union. I don't know if I'm going to say it quite right, but there's a farm cooperative and Kristen Barker and Flecker Vera are involved in that. The union cooperative, I'm not got the right name for it, but there's a lot of great movement for that in Cincinnati, and I 100% support it.
Okay, and then there's one more follow-up question, which is what other pro-cooperative policies will you work to implement?
Well, that's a good question. Pro-cooperative
Policies.
Well, I would support them with our budget, which I think is the best way that you can possibly help out. What happened, as an example, with the Clifton Market was that we had 5 members of council who supporting the Clifton Market with $400,000. And unfortunately, it got vetoed by the mayor. If you don't have 6 votes, it's not veto-proof. But I would support them financially, which I think is the most important way to support them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And if there are any more follow-up questions on that, please feel free to ask. Happy to pause and interject.
Sure.
Okay. Another question we have is how will you guarantee that you're working for constituents in the sense of how can you be held accountable personally?
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, the same way that I've been holding politicians accountable for 20 or 30 years. So we do protests, we write letters to the editor, we visit them in their office, and if need be, we go to City Council and raise a fuss. And so I would encourage you guys to do all the same for me. If you need to hold me accountable for my actions in some ways, that's how we do it.
All right.
Yeah.
And what is the best way for constituents to communicate with you?
Direct communication. So we gave out our phone number, 221-VOTE. That's 221-8683. And then my direct email, which is briangarry@briangarry.com. BRIANGARRY @something.com. Double R. Yep.
Double R. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what are your plans to work within the council to move the city forward?
So moving the city forward is a very large question, and I would say similar to what we did with the NAACP. So we work as much as possible on the consensus model. But if you have to move forward, with 5 or 6, then that's what you have to do. Moving our city forward, to me, our slogan is One Cincinnati. That slogan came to me in 2003, and it's been the slogan ever since, which stands for Opportunity, Neighborhoods, and Equality. So we can't move forward. So we've got progress, like progress in downtown. It's all beautiful and wonderful. Progress in over the Rhine. But that's not really moving the city forward as one Cincinnati. So if we're only moving half the city forward, it's not really moving us forward. We have to bring everyone together and move them forward so that everyone can benefit from the renaissance that's taken place in downtown and over the Rhine.
Are there certain areas that you think need this special attention?
Well, sure. I mean, if you just look at the income levels throughout the city, I would focus on the lowest income areas, because those are the people that are hurting, and those are the people that need our help. Other areas where they're doing well, that's great that they're doing well. But as a family, which we are, if one of us was suffering, we would certainly focus our attention on that person who's suffering and try to help them in any way we can. So as an example, South Cumminsville, North Fairmount, Avondale, there are a lot of places that are struggling and that need our support. A lot of Price Hill, a lot of Westwood, and those are Lower Price Hill. Some of the areas, basically any area that is of the lowest income, and those are the people who need our help the most.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. city status. A little bit of a shift in gear, but
Sure.
people are really curious about this right now. Do you approve? Would you keep Cincinnati a sanctuary city?
Yes, I would definitely keep Cincinnati a sanctuary city. So I was involved in the sanctuary movement that occurred in the 80s, which these political refugees were fleeing for their lives from Central America. And we were not accepting them into the borders of the U.S., even though they were being killed in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. And we would help them, because they couldn't get sanctuary in the U.S., we would help them get to Canada. And this was with the Quakers and various other groups, the Central American Task Force, and wonderful, wonderful people. And some people went to prison with this. I was myself arrested at the federal building trying to protect immigrant rights with my mentor, Reverend McCracken. So I'm strongly for immigrant rights, and in our current situation, I'm a close friend of a woman downtown, Sam Rhea, who owns a restaurant and is an upstanding citizen and provides jobs and provides culture for our city with the Lebanese restaurant. And she is facing her status is being denied, and she's facing deportation. And it's just ridiculous, you know, when Trump said, "Oh, we're going to go after bad hombres." That these are not bad hombres. These are people who we value and who we need in our city and our country, and should not be deported. These are not people who are criminals. You know, women and families, separating people. It's completely wrong.
And then another big issue facing our city right now is a racial divide. What can you do to promote the healing of this rift that we're seeing right now?
Sure. So try to explain this a little bit. I was involved with the city uprising in 2001. And it was an uprising, not a riot. And that's an important distinction, because when people are oppressed for so long, they can only take so much. And obviously 15 black men were killed in that 5-year period just preceding that uprising. And so after the uprising, a boycott ensued, which I supported. And I don't apologize for that. And the reason I'm mentioning these items is because there's not going to be a healing until people's rights are respected, until we stop unjustly killing African American men, until we have equal pay regardless of your race, until we spend our city's funds in an equal way across our city. We're not going to you can't expect people to heal when the wound is still gaping. You know, there has to be a salve, and that salve is economic justice. That salve is equal rights for all, and then we can have racial healing, because it's not based upon really race. So much of it is based upon class and oppression. So it's we have to have equality for all, and then we can have healing, I guess, in a nutshell.
You're very passionate about this.
I am.
I just want to.
I was born and raised in Bonds Hill. I was with black people all my life. I mean, I know it sounds strange. I didn't even know I was white until I was 11. You know, I was at a bowling alley, at Seymour Bowling Alley. I was on the bowling team, and I looked in the whole entire bowling alley. I was the only white person, and that was the first time I ever realized that. And so most white people are not raised around black people at all. And I was, for whatever reason, that was my upbringing. And so I have a different lens, or I can look through two different lenses. And so I felt the sting of injustice. And so that's what I worked on for most of my life.
And you have worked on it for most of your life. Mm-hmm. All right. All right, and then another big issue that our membership wanted to know about was education. Mm-hmm. And you're talking a lot about equity. Mm-hmm. How can you promote equity in the schools, regardless of race and circumstances?
Yeah, so what I've seen is very dedicated teachers in the Cincinnati public schools, a dedicated staff, a dedicated administration, and they've got, I think, 33,000 kids. And many schools are on 100% free lunches. What that indicates is that there are a huge number of people living in poverty who go to these schools. They're free schools, they're public, they're universal, they're what we need. And so I don't feel that they're receiving an inferior education. What I do know is that our society has economic disparities where people who are in the top 1%, people who are, we'll just say, in the top 10%, which is making, if you're making over $100,000, you're basically in the top 10%. So like 90% of us make less than $100,000, and I think about half of us make less than $50,000. In the city of Cincinnati, the average income is $24,000. So what I'm saying is that there are some people who can send their kids to Seven Hills and so on. And so that also says something about their home life and the support that they receive at home. And if people don't have the resources that they need, then their children are not going to have the resources that they need. So even if they're in a great public school, there are things that they lack at home because of our disparities, such as the internet. Not everyone has it. And such as time with their parents, because their parents may be working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So they don't have the same resources. But if we did have an equal society, if we did spend our city's budget not just on the elite and the multinational corporations, and we took bulk of our money, which is what we should do, and spend it on the less fortunate citizens, then we would have a more equal society, and we would then see better outcomes in schools. Because when kids have the food that they need, the rest that they need, the secure home life that they need, they do better in school.
Okay, thank you. Very complete answer.
Sure.
All right, and along the same lines, would you support early education and child care expansion?
Absolutely. Parents need child care expansion. Daycare, child care. They're changing the terminologies, but I had 30 people on the ground for issue 44 to make sure that passed. And I strongly supported issue 44, which is also called the preschool promise, which there's many facts and figures about brain development and how children are basically developed at 6 years old. And so if you don't pour into those children at an early age, there are these private prison companies, and they look for a low reading level in 4th grade. Reading level, if kids aren't reading by 4th grade, if there's not a high level of people reading at that age, that's where they place their prisons. Because they know if they're not reading at the 4th grade level, there's a strong likelihood that they're going to need a prison in that area.
Wow.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Yeah, very dark. If you are just joining us, I'm Nicole. This is Brian Garry. He's a candidate for Cincinnati City Council. And we're also here with our ASL interpreter, Dawn, from Cincinnati State's ASL program. And thank you again, for both of you, for being here. If you would like to...
And I do know sign language, so I could interpret for Dawn, but I won't.
It would be fun to see the synonyms.
Yes.
If you would like to ask a question, we encourage you to do so. All you have to do is click the link to the video feed or the video itself and comment with your question. It will be relayed to me here, and I will pause and ask. I am going to go ahead and talk a little about health and safety.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay?
Big issues.
Big issues. All right. What is the city's responsibility for public health?
So I'm just a vehement supporter of our Cincinnati Health Clinics, also called the Cincinnati Health Centers, which provide health care for 43,000 people. It's oftentimes the first point of contact for in this terrible opioid addiction that we have. They provide nursing, visiting nurses for geriatric patients, for prenatal and postpartum, so they're reducing our infant mortality. And the city funds these health clinics. And in fact, I am a patient. I've been receiving dental care from our Cincinnati Health Clinic since 1991 when I ran the Catholic Worker House, the homeless shelter. That's when I was first exposed to the concept, and I've used them ever since. And I'm very proud of their work. They're excellent doctors, excellent dental hygienists, top-notch care. And this is our primary way that we provide health care. And unfortunately, every year, you know, there's so many things that we could cut, but we always seem to focus on the smallest items in our budget to go after instead of the larger items in the budget. We focus on these smaller ones, and I consider healthcare to be a basic right, universal healthcare for all, and that our health centers should be viewed as a basic service equal to fire, equal to police, equal to garbage collection. Because as you know, at the top levels of our country now, they're cutting people's ability to receive health care for pre-existing conditions, and we need our health centers now more than ever, and we have to support them. We cannot cut them.
So there's a couple directions I could go from here, but I'm gonna go one way, and then we'll go back and backtrack. Okay,
No
Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
Do you support Planned Parenthood?
I support Planned Parenthood, and the crazy thing about the views that people have about Planned Parenthood is they think about Planned Parenthood, they think about abortion. My understanding is it's 3% of their services. 3%, so 97% of their services are basic health care for women. My girlfriend uses Planned Parenthood as her women's health provider. Her two teenage daughters for their basic health care, for pap smears and screenings and the things that women's health issues. That's what they go to Planned Parenthood. That's where they go. They provide health care, and they need our support now more than ever with the situation with Trump attempting to, defund them or whatever that means, that they won't accept their Medicaid. And if they do lose the ability to receive Medicaid, I believe it's at least 40% of the people who use them now for women's health will lose their health care, their women's health care, which is terrible. Yeah.
Is there anything the city council can do to help?
I don't think so. Unfortunately, I mean, that's like a federal issue, and we can advocate, we can make resolutions, we could attempt to rally the citizens. I mean, if I were on city council, I would see it as my continuing purpose in life to rally citizenry, to rally citizen groups and citizen people. And if an issue came up like this, I would say we need to have a rally. Let's go out and make some noise and draw attention to this issue, because that is how issues become supported by government. It is not the other way around. I think you could probably scarcely find an issue that is an important issue, like the civil rights issue or environmental issues, where it's not citizen groups pressuring and fighting for these issues that come forward, and then the government must acquiesce to the citizen group. The party and the government, back in the days of Martin Luther King, I mean, they didn't want to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1968. They were pressured into it. And in the same way, I would call all of us together and push these issues forward, like Planned Parenthood.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack. You mentioned the opioid epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything the Cincinnati Council can do about that?
There's plenty City Council can do about that one. I am an addict, and I am recovering for 33 years. And I am totally unashamed about this, because I am an example of what can happen to an individual if they're given the proper access and proper we'll just say access to treatment. I received treatment in 1982. I was the first batch of kids. We didn't have any treatment for adolescents. They opened up adolescent care unit. It was on Glenmore Avenue, where Midway School is now. It was Old St. George. But anyway, I was the first group of kids that went through there. I was given, a seed was planted in me. And I was given a chance where many kids are not given a chance. They lock them up, throw away the key. And so I'm a huge advocate for treatment. And so as an example, we could fund places like the Prospect House in Price Hill, which has 60 guys that are winners. You know, they turn out more winners than any other organization that I'm aware of. It's a residential treatment, so they have to have, heroin users need long-term treatment. They need detox, medical detox, such as what's provided, what we call the CAT House, which is the Center for Addiction Treatment, CAT House downtown. It's the only place that'll detox you, and it's hard to get a bed there. It's hard to get a bed. You have to call 7:30 in the morning, you know, to see if they have a bed or not. And if you don't, you're a heroin addict, then you're likely to go back out, obviously, again, because heroin, if you don't have heroin, you feel like you're going to die. I mean, it's like a life or death situation. So, and people do die. And as a matter of fact, about 2 people a day in our county die. More than one dies in our county every day. And if this was the Ebola disease, I think how many people died in America from Ebola? 1? But it was a big thing. But we're talking about 2 people a day in one small county in Ohio. But we don't look at it as this public health epidemic. Addiction is a disease. Addiction is a mental health issue. And we need to treat it as such. And we need to fund long-term treatment. We're in Walnut Hills right now. It's where my mother lives. And right on the next street over is the First Step House. So, and this is the type of places that we can fund. And of course we need to be involved in prevention, but after the person is an addict, we need to provide long-term detox and long-term treatment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind everybody, if you have a question for Brian, please do ask. All you have to do is click on the link to the feed or the feed itself and comment with your question. And I'd be happy to interrupt and ask your question. Thanks. I am going to move on to a different topic a bit. Okay. Gun violence. I'm touching on all the really dark topics first.
Well, they're real topics.
Yeah.
And they're real topics that we have to address and not sweep under the carpet.
So how would you address the current gun violence problem we're seeing in the city?
So before an individual shoots a gun at someone, before that bullet comes out of the end of that barrel, there is so much that has occurred in that individual's life. I witnessed a murder as an example. I was the vice president of the Peace Bowl as a children's football game. We're there to help them get to know each other from different communities and not end up in rival gangs later. And I was outside the Peace Bowl and I witnessed a person killed a person. Terrible, terrible situation. And I was there with Reverend Mingo. He is the president, I was the vice president. And it was surreal. You'd be surprised at something that happens like this when shots go off. But it was like there was silence for a second, and all of a sudden everybody started running away from that area. And I saw Reverend Mingo going towards the bullets, so I went towards the bullets with him, and we tried to revive the young man, and it was a fatal gunshot wound. He died. But he was 19 years old. He was a dropout from Woodward. He lived in Avondale. This individual was HIV positive. There was a lot that went into his life before he was killed, and the individual that killed him was a 19-year-old kid, was a dropout from Woodward, had a child under 2 months old. There was a lot that went into their life. They had terrible lives. Their parents didn't have what they needed to provide for their children. And I think that if we were to provide what they need from our budget and have our budget reflect our values, which our values aren't that someone should be neglected. Our values are not that some people should suffer and not have the resources that they need for education, for jobs, for health care. That we want everyone to have the things that they need, and we know that there's enough for everyone. And in our budget is big enough for everyone, and we can supply their needs. And so what I'm saying is, when you're addressing gun violence, when you're addressing violence in general, you really need to address it from a poverty perspective. From, you know, why is there no gun violence in Hyde Park? Why is there no gun violence in Mount Lookout? Why is the gun violence focused in areas of poverty, concentrated poverty? And if you alleviate the poverty, you alleviate a lot of the gun violence. So the more social justice we have, the less criminal justice we will need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I am going to jump ahead because we are coming up on 8:20. So if you have a question, now is the time to submit it so we can make sure we have time to ask Brian before we wrap up. Again, just comment on the feed with your question. I'm happy to ask. I want to talk a little bit about transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some issues that our members have brought up with transportation are one, people who are in underserved areas are having problems with the length of the transportation period. And also there's some accessibility issues with transportation. Can you address those things?
Definitely. So I am a bus rider. I rode the bus for 16 years, every day, twice a day. And there is problems with using buses as transportation because we don't have an extensive enough routes, and they're not frequent enough. So what happens is, to get from point A to point B, many times in Cincinnati, even within the Cincinnati city limits, takes 2 hours. So that's not okay. We need to change the method of funding that we use for our buses. We need to increase funding for our buses. We need to focus on public transportation for the people who need it in Cincinnati. And I am going to be riding the bus for 1 week, exclusively riding the bus to everywhere that I need to go. And I encourage any of you all to accompany me or to do this on your own, because this is an economic justice issue, and that people can't get to jobs and to shopping, and they might have to spend 4 hours a day. That's 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. That's time that they're not spending with their children. And that's really it's just not fair. And so we need to address that issue. We need to properly fund our bus transportation system with SORTA.
All right. And then the other half of the question was about accessibility. So how do you perceive accessibility in the city on the public transportation system in general?
Well, I think with our public transportation system, we have, there are two forms of public transportation system. We have our buses, and then we have access. So access buses are like these little mini buses that you've probably heard of, that people can call. They can take them, people who need that sort of access, people who are in wheelchairs, etc. They will come and pick you up and help you get it and strap you in and all that stuff. You can also access a traditional bus with a wheelchair. And so, you know, the buses, you probably noticed them, they're kind of kneel down, and they'll have a little ramp and whatnot. So our bus system is accessible, and we do have access transportation, which you call them up, and they will actually come and pick you up and take you directly to your destination and come back and get you. Not to say that any of that is perfect. I mean, obviously, the frequency of routes and where they go, and even with access, I'm sure that if you spoke with a person, a user, they may have some areas in which they can improve as well. But my understanding is there are access issues within our city. I mean, we have made a concerted effort to meet ADA. I was the special needs coordinator for the recovery in Cincinnati for like 6 years. I had to sue one location using the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, which the Ohio Civil Rights Commission can sue on your behalf, and we needed them to have a ramp. And so, I sued for them. But there are still issues. We can still do better and go further with our access.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a few more viewer questions.
Okay, great.
Okay. One is, you mentioned 3CDC earlier. They have done a lot for urban development in Over the Rhine, but not without criticism.
Correct.
What can be done to balance growth and still provide affordable housing?
So, balancing growth and providing affordable housing are not mutually exclusive. In fact, not just myself, but for many years, we've been pushing, and sometimes effectively, or sometimes we're listened to, but sometimes, many times not. When there's a development, I mean, it's just simple. We should all believe in a mixed income community. We should believe in a mixed income development. So when you have a development such as the $10 million that the city is giving to the 4th and Plum project down there where the old Pogue building was, they should have a certain amount of affordable housing in their project. Affordable simply means that you're not spending over 30% of your budget, of your income, on your housing. So we should also set up an affordable housing trust fund, which they have in many other cities around the country, even in Kentucky and in Columbus. And so we should fund it so that we can create affordable housing or inclusionary housing zones within our city. Basically, I feel that anytime a developer is receiving city funds, which almost every development does receive city funds, every major development, that there should be earmarked, personally I believe it should be 25% of that project to be affordable housing. And I think that only makes sense because we can't control the market. We can't control how, if people want to create, exclusive housing or whatever, we can't control that. But when they ask for our money, when they want our money to complete their project, we can require them to provide affordable housing in that project. And I think we should.
Okay,
Absolutely,
thank you.
Yeah.
And one more question. And you might have touched a little bit on this earlier, but see if you can repeat or expand on it. What can we do as a community to make Cincinnati that works for all and not just for special interests or corporate entities?
Well, yeah, this is sort of what I touched on before. So the city has the ability to give people tax abatements. They create TIFs, which is tax increment financing districts. We also give cash money to certain projects or even for profit. It seems crazy to me to give our tax dollars to for-profit entities. That just seems counterproductive. So if we're all here in this room and we put all of our money on the table, I just don't think that many of us would say, those corporations, those multinational large corporations that we have headquartered here, they really need our money. So they're really hurting. We should give some of our money or a good portion of our money to them. I just don't think we would say that as a group. And I think if we voted as a community, if it went to referendum, should we be engaging in all of this corporate welfare? I just don't think that it would even pass, because the same way that the conservatives say, the poor, they should raise themselves up by their own bootstraps, I think that we would say that about the corporations. Why can't they raise themselves up by their own bootstraps? Why are we supporting them and propping them up? I mean, they're making money. I mean, that's their goal, right? I mean, Kroger's is the largest grocery store in the country, but they demanded that we give them $11 million to build their parking garage on Vine and Central Parkway. And so I think that we need to support our communities more. In other words, the same funding that we use, community development block grants and other forms of funding that we use to support these private companies, we should be using to support nonprofits and other agencies providing housing and resources that are needed in the community.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have time for maybe one more question.
Okay.
Okay, and I know I haven't actually touched on the environment, which is a big issue for you.
It is a big issue.
A big issue for you. So let's go ahead and touch on that then. There is a lot of conflict right now between the city and county with sewers. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for improving that situation?
Yeah, so there's it's a crazy thing with our sewers. Basically, the city maintains our sewers, but the county owns it. And it was a decision that was made about 50 years ago, and that decision is coming up for renewal in 1 year. And essentially, what I predict will happen is that the county will essentially take it over completely. They will own it, and they will maintain it. And what I believe should happen is that those employees should be maintained within the state retirement, and that they should, remain in their union. That's Ask Me Union runs that, and that they should, keep all of their benefits. And so there would really not be any difference for the workers. And we may see some of our rates drop even with that. And just a couple things that people can do to help their sewer rates drop is your sewer rates are dependent upon the water usage. So however much water you use, that depends on how much sewer bill you have. So if, as an example, you have a yard and you water your yard, the best thing to do is to capture your rainwater and use your rainwater to water your yard, because you will not then be using that water. It will not be going through your water meter, and you will lower your sewer bill. There are other things that we can do. Our county is under a federal consent decree to divert 14 billion gallons of water per year out of our stream, out of our sewers. Because what happens is the whole problem with why the EPA is on us about this is that we have storm sewer overflows. What that means is raw sewage is going out into the Ohio River because we have combined sewers. And we are working to eliminate the combined sewers so that you have two sewers, one for sewage, one for your stormwater. And I would like to see us complete that project as soon as possible, possibly issuing bonds and using TIFs.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are pretty much at the end of our time.
Okey-dokey.
I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to say anything in summary that you want to say. But first, let me remind everybody, if you missed any portion of this Q&A, please check for the link to the full recording. You can catch up. In addition, there are recordings online of other Q&A events we have done, so you can catch up if you want to. And do follow us on Twitter at TWWSWOH. We post notifications of new events there regularly. And thank you again for being here. Happy birthday one more time.
Thank you so much.
Everybody, say happy birthday to Brian.
Happy birthday.
And thank you again for spending your birthday evening with us.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
And the pleasure is all mine. I want to thank the entire women's movement across our city and across our county and across the country, because this is what is changing our country, bringing people together in ways that they haven't been brought together before. And I know, I just want to thank Nicole and Sean and Martha and Dawn and the future people who are going to be helping out. This is new. I mean, this is wonderful. We haven't had this sort of. It's almost like community media. Being our own media. Because you wouldn't see this on Fox News, and so, but we are creating our own media and disseminating our own message with our own devices. I mean, it's pretty amazing what we're doing, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of what you're doing on this level and affecting issues throughout our country and throughout our city. So I wanted to just thank you for that, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I feel like you are my people. You are the people I've been waiting for and everything, because we haven't had this sort of resurgence of community and based around progressive issues. We just haven't had it for I think my whole entire adult life. And so I'm just really proud and thankful for you guys investing your energy in this. You're not getting paid to do it. You're doing it because you believe in it. And I think that's what we need more of. And I just want to thank you guys, for being here and doing what you do.
Is there anything you'd like to say about your campaign before we finalize the Q&A?
Well, we need your help. We need your help to move these issues forward. I mean, if you believe in the progressive issues of social justice, economic justice, environmental justice, it takes a movement. It takes community activists coming together, and we can change our city, and we can change our county, and we can change our country if we all come together. And I need you. So go to briangarry.com, sign up on our volunteer sheet, donate, contact my campaign manager, David Lynch. He's doing an excellent job, came from the Bernie Sanders campaign. And we're pushing this forward. We're continuing to push our progressive agenda forward, and we need all of you to come together with us. We've got events coming up, we've got parades, we've got office warming parties, and we need you on every front, helping with research, helping with getting this information out through social media. And again, you can go to briangarry.com. It is my birthday, and you can donate $27 to our campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for more Q&A events. Tomorrow we'll be with Wendell Young, and next week we'll be with Ozzie Davis. Good night.
Good night.